Hey everybody, welcome back to another Jackson Jetsetting tips and tricks video for your next cruise vacation. Today I am doing my tips and tricks for the Norwegian Joy. This is one of the largest ships that Norwegian is currently sailing out of Miami during my time that I went aboard, but now it's going to move over to the Pacific Northwest and do some sailings out of Alaska as well. So these tips and tricks are going to be how to maximize your time on board the Norwegian Joy, what venues I felt like were amazing, what ones kind of missed the mark for me. Everything you need to know for your next NCL vacation is going to be in this video. So thanks a lot for watching and let's get going. So this was my first NCL voyage in quite some time, over 10 years, so I was excited to see exactly all the technological improvements with the app, as well as all the pre-cruise experience, checking into the cruise, etc., how that all went. Overall was pretty good. I felt like the app had a lot of functionality before the cruise. Definitely some cruise lines have a slightly better app, but it's definitely not the worst. I was able to book some appointments for specialty dining before my cruise. Short excursions all within the app, and everything functioned really well. I received a boarding time between 9:30 and 10 a.m., which I felt like was pretty early. Figured I wouldn't be let on board immediately at that time, but I wanted to see what the full experience was like. I had flown in the night before into Miami and had a hotel in the Brickell area. You can check out a full review of the Hyatt-centric Miami Brickell on the channel. And that brings me to my first major tip for NCL is probably not arriving at the port until about 11 a.m. The 9:30 a.m. arrival time was just way too early. I ended up waiting in the terminal after clearing security for over an hour and a half. And once the boarding process did begin, people stood up and we stood there for over 30 minutes before the gates actually opened for us to begin the actual embarkation process. So overall, I felt like this was a big miss by NCL. I don't know if it was my particular voyage or not, but this is just what I experienced. Other cruise lines really have nailed this and makes the whole experience on embarkation day super smooth and quick, getting you on board as quickly as possible. So felt like NCL could have done a better job here. Now, my next tip is once you do get on board, if your itinerary does feature a tender port, you can make reservations for that tender on some of the screens on board. Now, there were technical difficulties with that as well, so I would maybe just head to the shore excursion desk or maybe guest services to be able to secure that tender time for your visit. Great Stirrup Cay was our main port on this voyage. It's really just a 2-night voyage, so the only port, but it's still a tender port that will be changing at the end of this year. So I want to make sure that I got a nice tender time in the morning. If you have a shore excursion on shore though, that is your tender ticket. So you don't really have to go through this process if you book a shore excursion. So that might be a nice strategy to avoid some of the kind of chaos in getting off of the ship. These are big ships, and the tenders sometimes are a little bit lower capacity and take a while to load. So this is one thing that can probably improve your day in port at those tender ports. Now on embarkation day, I like to get all of the to-dos done as quickly as possible. So getting my muster station drill done quickly. I bought a drink package quickly as well. Those are only for sale on embarkation day. If you haven't bought one already, they only sold them on board on their short cruise, but you can book that in advance as well. Another tip is to pack some beach clothes in your carry-on if you plan on using the pool. Your staterooms will not be ready until around 3 p.m. on NCL ships, which is a lot later than other ships that I've sailed on with different brands. So you're going to have a lot of time, a lot of idle time once you get on board. Definitely enjoy that lunch experience on board. I would avoid the buffet, the garden cafe, because that does get quite busy. The main dining rooms are open for lunch. That's the route that I took on embarkation day. But you are going to want to have all of your clothes that you need for the day before your stateroom is ready with you in your carry-on luggage. Some cruise lines allow you to bring wine on board on embarkation day, and NCL does as well, but not for free. They do charge a $15 per bottle corkage fee, so just keep that in mind. You're going to want those in your carry-on bags as well. Now, once my stateroom was ready, I headed there to drop off my backpack that I had been carrying around all day. I was on deck 5, which is the lowest public deck on the ship. And here's another tip for you. Choose your location of your stateroom very wisely, because I was very close to all of the indoor decks. 6, 7, and 8 are the big indoor decks on board the Norwegian Joy. So I was really close to, say, the theater, a lot of the restaurants on board, but I wanted to go up top to the pool deck a lot. I wanted to go get some fresh air. And so that is a pretty long commute from deck 5. The elevators on the Norwegian Joy were pretty packed. A lot of times it took a while to come to my floor sometimes. This is a typical problem that's not exclusive to the Norwegian Joy. There's a lot of ships out there that have this issue. So I think the sweet spot is being in one of the middle decks, maybe 9, 10, or 11, so that you're close to the pool decks, but also those indoor decks. Now, there's a lot of cool things to do on board the Norwegian Joy. They have one of the only go-kart tracks at sea. I was hoping that I could book this in advance with like a reservation once I got on board, but unfortunately it's first come, first served. So the lines do get long very quickly, and it was a short sailing that people did want to experience this as soon as possible. So the lines were very long, unfortunately. So just keep that in mind. It's about a 6 to 8 minute race depending on the session that you choose. There's a beginner session, there's a duo section where 2 people can ride in the cart, and then there's a single. Rides are $15 per person. They're not included in your voyage, so just keep that in mind. Don't be disappointed when you get on board and you have to pay for a ride. There are 2 major water slides on board as well. The Ocean Loop is going to be the most intense of those 2. There's a lot of stipulations with what you need to wear to ride, as well as a weight requirement, both a minimum and a maximum weight. So just keep that in mind for this, that the little ones may not be able to ride it because you do have to have enough momentum to get over that first hill and not get stuck on the slide. So that was a major issue. I know that they won't operate this during certain weather times as well. Even if it looks like perfect weather outside, wind and things can make a difference on this water slide. And then the Aqua Racer is a unique water slide as well. It actually uses single and double tubes. So if you're family traveling, you can ride with one of your kids, which is super fun. They have fun designs going down the slide as well. I wasn't able to film in there because my GoPro was wrist mounted. You can bring a chest mount and they'll let you film in there. So just keep that in mind. But a very gentle water slide, a lot of fun, and the line did get long for this one. There are an impressive amount of pools on board as well. The main pool deck, I feel like, had a lot of open space though. This is due to some of the design changes that were made once the ship came over from mainland China. This was originally designed for the Asian market. But there are a lot of hot tubs. There are exclusive adults only hot tubs over at Spice H2O, which is the adults only area in the back of the ship underneath the go-kart track. There's a screen there for playing sports and different videos throughout the day. There's a bar. So I really liked that area a lot. Felt like this ship did have a lot of different areas to spread people around that were looking for the sun. And there's a lot of beach chairs here. So overall, I felt like the pool decks were perfectly fine on board the Norwegian Joy. Now, in terms of dining, you have a lot of included dining on board, as well as some specialty restaurants like every cruise ship. You have 3 main dining rooms. The Manhattan room is going to be the largest and most traditional of those, but Taste and Savor are going to be twin restaurants located opposite each other, a much smaller dining room. All 3 of these are going to have the same menu for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and are included in your cruise. One of my favorite spots I found on board was The Local, which is a 24-hour restaurant. Kind of functions as the ship's pub, though it doesn't look like a traditional pub. But they have Reuben sandwiches, they have chicken wings, they have pretzel bites with some delicious cheese sauce, all included in your voyage. I loved this because it was open 24 hours, so come out of a late night activity or something like that and you want a snack, it is available to you. The Garden Cafe is the ship's buffet, and this is going to be open for breakfast, lunch, and dinner as well. A lot of good variety here on the buffet. Seemed like the food quality wasn't necessarily mind-blowing, but also completely edible, and I feel like you could find something for everyone here. It does get quite slammed during those peak meal times, so my advice is to try and avoid it either by going at off-peak times or heading down to the observation lounge, which does have a small buffet. There's not as many hot items. It's a much smaller buffet, admittedly. But if you're just looking for that quick snack and maybe a refill on your drip coffee, this is available here, and I feel like a lot of people did not find this on my voyage. Now, I've been on dozens of cruises, and I love a good specialty restaurant. I really don't mind paying a little extra for a heightened meal experience on board. I love a good steakhouse on land, and I've found that a lot of the steakhouses that I've enjoyed at sea have been excellent. So when I got on board, I went ahead and booked teppanyaki for my first night, which is a traditional hibachi experience, and then Cagney's on night 2. Teppanyaki was definitely expensive, $60 a person plus tip, and I usually tip a little extra because the show involved with the chef is always really great. Our chef was amazing, and I felt like the food quality was really good. I felt like I've gotten more food and more variety of food on other voyages on different ships. There was no lobster option, for example. So overall, I felt like this was a very solid experience, and I do recommend doing that. Just know that it's very expensive and even more expensive than something like a Benihana's on land. Night 2, I tried Cagney's, and Cagney's was a big disappointment. Again, it was $60 a person. I ordered the steak, and the steak was presented really well, but it was very tough. It was not a high quality piece of meat, and unfortunately, I gotta mark them down for this one. This was probably the biggest disappointment of my cruise. It was just a lot of money to pay for something that I probably could have gotten in the main dining room and been perfectly happy. In terms of entertainment on board, I do feel like this is where NCL does suffer. They didn't really have a ton going on in terms of activities on board, and the ones that they do were all sort of an extra charge. They had a lot of game shows like Deal or No Deal, which normally I actually enjoy paying and playing. I usually have pretty good luck with that, actually, but the venues that they chose for these games are not really conducive to a big, large group. And then the main shows, the first night was the Beatles cover band, which was really great. I thought they put on a great show, but it wasn't a full production show. Elements was the production show that was available on night 2, and I felt like they did a really good job. But overall, I just feel like there could have been a little bit more on a ship this big, and I felt like the late night activities were lacking. The ship does have a comedy club, and I was able to attend one of the performances by the onboard comedian, and he was really great. This turns into the nightclub at night, and that was really hopping on the last night of the voyage. And maybe I'm just a little spoiled from a lot of Royal Caribbean cruising that has an ice show, production shows, full Broadway shows a lot of the time, but I can't help but compare it to those ships, and I just felt like there could have been a little bit more on the Norwegian Joy. Now, when it's time to leave the ship, I do recommend leaving the ship as early as possible to beat the rush. I try and book a flight in the early morning, and I'm comfortable with that. A lot of people like to spend the day in Miami and fly out late at night in case there are any delays, and that's perfectly fine. There's a lot of things to do. There's even excursions that you can book with those late flights in mind that they can store your luggage for you. So if you're one of those people who wants everything planned for you, definitely take that route. For me, I'd like to just beat the rush and get my Uber and head over to the airport. All right, so that should do it for my tips and tricks on board the Norwegian Joy. What tips do you have from your NCL sailing? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you on the next video.